All right. Welcome, everyone. Just a short second. I will have a quick look whether I can change the camera settings here. I wanted to get you guys a little bit of a better camera, but apparently that is a little bit difficult. Anyways, yeah, in today's live session, I wanted to talk a little bit about it's something that we've been discussing a lot in the club and in the last coaching sessions, etc. It's been coming up a lot. It is the fact that many people ask me, but what do I do when my tinnitus gets so loud and frustrating and I can't sit down in silence and read a book and or like get to sleep in the evening and my tinnitus is blaring loud and I just don't get past that. And I say I do understand, and I can fully relate to that. Seeing that I'm someone I'm born deaf on my one ear, and I've had my hearing aid and tinnitus for a long time as well before actually even getting into the business of creating an online program and coaching people and all of that. I've had tinnitus and hearing loss before, right? I've worked a normal job and in a consulting business. I've worked in the startup industry, and then eventually I thought, okay, well, let me do what not many other people are doing, but that's besides the point. For me, when I get this question, my tinnitus is so loud and distracting. I say that it's often not only the tinnitus that's loud and distracting, but the emotions and thoughts that come with loud and distracting tinnitus. So, because the tinnitus is loud and distracting, it makes us emotional, and because it makes us emotional, we wish it wasn't there, and because we wish it wasn't there, our brain perceives it as something that is very dangerous, captivating us the whole time, 24/7. And in the same vein that I always make this example, why don't you think that the humming of your fridge in the morning is dangerous? It's because your brain has seen that humming from a fridge is nothing dangerous, right? Therefore, the only reason that you would have to think that the humming of your fridge is dangerous or weird is potentially when you think that your fridge is breaking and that you will potentially have to buy a new fridge. So, what I mean by that is that it's the categorization that our brain does of the sound in our environment, because our brain is always monitoring, right? Our brain and our ears are constantly monitoring for danger. So is our eyes. But that's what they are, right? And then they make an assessment. Our ears make an assessment: is this dangerous or not? But surely, when you have read on the internet and in many forums, and the ENT tells you and the audiologist tells you, hey, there's nothing we can do, and you might just have this for life. And of course, the first reaction from many people is one, quite understandably so. I mean, that happened to me as well at the start when the ENT told me 15 years ago, well, mate, you're deaf in one ear, you screwed up your other ear. well, this is what you did, right? And surely that made me quite anxious, and surely that led to the fact that I had more difficulty dealing with my tinnitus than I should or would have had someone else told me the story a little bit different. So my opinion about this is always, I've worked with probably close to 500 people now, and maybe even more, but my opinion is that the biggest obstacle in managing tinnitus is not the tinnitus sound itself, but the emotions, thoughts, and feelings that we have connected with the tinnitus that become perpetual and habitual because our brain has tagged it as something uncomfortable, dangerous, because other people have shared in online forums or wherever of the danger and difficulty they're going through, because your ENT and audiologist tells you that's not reversible, right? And how could you not have, in our modern day society where we think that the doctors basically take care of everything, it's a one pill assignment, the doctor helps us with it, and then we're checked and we're done. Of course, in that vein, when the doctor says, or your audiologist, there's nothing we can do about this one, and of course you get very upset. And then the second stream that I see, what I said before, is then people go to the internet, because that's where we go when we have a difficulty, and then we Google on the internet, like, okay, what can I do now? I mean, what can I do about this thing? And then when then the experience comes, like, well, there's not much that we can do about this right now, then the anxiety is even higher. So what I said earlier on, where I said it's not the tinnitus sound itself that keeps people in this negative vicious loop, but the way that our brain becomes used to the negative emotions and feelings around the sound, right? And that stands in the way of having tinnitus without being bothered by it, right? So the thing is not the perception of the sound. Of course, like, I also get very loud tinnitus. I get spikes as well, and I already am deaf on my other ear, and I get these kind of spikes, and these spikes might be very, very loud, but I'm not getting emotionally upset about them. I just wait for them to pass, like they do, and they might last a while, and that's it, right? So it's the relationship that we build with the sound that determines on how our brain is going to interpret the sound that we experience. So the process of habituation depends on the fact of how well can we start teaching our brain in the same vein that if we go to the street and we get attacked by a dog, the dog bites us in the leg, then very naturally, so the brain, and this is the survival instinct, the brain will go, okay, all dogs are dangerous, right? Which is absolutely not true. But the brain will say that because it wants to protect you. The brain wants to protect you from getting bitten by a dog again, right? Because it has tagged dogs as dangerous. So in the same vein, that when you deal with your tinnitus and you have all these negative emotions and feelings, and you can't help yourself but always being focused on it, you're getting upset about it, etc. Like, that's a very difficult emotion to experience, right? And your brain starts saying, like, aha, okay, this is the tinnitus doing that. That's why I'm so upset, right? And then your brain is like, oh yeah, the tinnitus is doing that. So the sound is doing this thing that we're so upset, and it's always making us so uncomfortable. It doesn't let us sleep. It's impossible to concentrate or read something in silence or to live our life again. Well, then surely you create that obstacle yourself of being able to perceive tinnitus without being bothered by it, or tinnitus simply going into the background, like the humming of the fridge example, where in the morning you drink your coffee in the kitchen, you can hear your fridge when you tune into it, but literally most of the time you won't be hearing your fridge humming, because it's not a sound that's important for your brain to present to yourself. It's the same thing about tinnitus. Now, there will be all these people who say, like, oh yeah, but with tinnitus something's wrong in your body, and I've had a pinched nerve. And it's the thing is, tinnitus is so common, as 20% of the population experience it. Of course, there will be people who have a tinnitus stimulus from a pinched nerve or from a neck and back issue, and as soon as they resolve it, it will be gone. But this thing on the internet to always say, like, whatever I did for my this or that will work for anyone else as well. So don't take this habituation bullshit. What is, like, the other day I had a comment on YouTube, I think, don't take this habituation bullshit. It's bullshit. I'm like, well, I've had tinnitus for 15 years, so you're effectively insulting me, telling me that I have no right to living a comfortable and good and healthy life while experiencing tinnitus. So you're telling me I've been not doing enough in order to get rid of my tinnitus for the last 15 years, which I have. I'm a healthy and a healthy young guy, and I'm not less healthy than probably this guy who's commenting that. But I have quite a lot of hearing loss, and that hearing loss has racked up and caused my tinnitus as well. Right. So I get very, very, very careful when some people are very dogmatic about tinnitus. Of course, there's a right way to figure out tinnitus, and to, of course, go to the doctor and maybe see what other underlying what other underlying issues you might have. But I get very, very, very careful when I hear that people become very dogmatic about, I've taken this for my tinnitus, so everyone else should also take it and try it. No. It's like the interview with the ENT I did from New York. Dr. Craig Casper, he said in the interview, we've seen one patient or one person with tinnitus. You've seen one person with tinnitus. And that's absolutely and 100% true, because everyone's tinnitus is different. It's caused by different factors. it's dealt with in different ways, and the person might have a very, very different relationship to that tinnitus than the next person. So I do, while I do advocate that people try, of course, in the early days with tinnitus and hearing loss, that of course everything has to be done and checked, and the GP and ENT should work together to make sure that you have no other underlying condition, which in over 95% of all the cases is true. That all of this is checked regardless, right? Important. Same thing when you have a frequent headache, you should eventually get your headache checked and seen. Okay, why the hell do I have a freaking headache? So with tinnitus, that's no different. But I do get a little bit more careful when people become dogmatic and say, okay, this is the one approach I found for myself, and only with sound therapy, or only by eating red meat raw, or only by doing 10 days water fast or something like that, can you get rid of tinnitus? That's not the case. Tinnitus is so common, and we have millions of people in the US, we have millions of people in the EU, hundreds of thousands of people in Germany. Luckily, most of the people are actually in the non-bothersome group, right? So there are a lot of people with bothersome tinnitus, but a lot of people also in the non-bothersome tinnitus group. So it's a sign that the brain will get used to the stimuli, so much so that it just simply puts in the background. So I had a coaching session earlier today, and the lady and I, we were talking, and she said, you know what? My son had tinnitus for 12 years, and he never even told me. And now I got this condition. I came clean to him. I told him, hey, I've got tinnitus. I'm really having problem dealing with it. And her son was like, and he's a doctor, by the way. And he's like, well, yeah, I've had that for 12 years. And she's like, why did you never tell me? He's like, well, I never thought it was important. And, so I think all of us probably know a lot more people with tinnitus than we think we do. It's just that it's very, very different and very individual. So let me get back to my very first point, to the first point that I was trying to make at the start of this live stream. Tinnitus, in the same way that many other conditions, is totally dependent on how you relate to it. Not all of it, not, of course not. I get it and I agree. But it is very much related to that, because when you relate to a chronic back pain in the way that this chronic back pain is not letting you do X, Y, Z, and only if you could relieve this chronic back pain, you would be able to get your life back, then you're making the obstacle very, very big to be able to continue with your life. And that, with the amygdala, the fear and panic based center in the brain, is actually something where you will become stuck in an habitual reaction of always gauging, how is my chronic back pain doing today, and can I do X, Y, Z? While, yes, of course, you should probably not throw in a big gym session, but there are probably many things that you would still be able to do with a chronic back pain. But as you have sort of like put a gauge in everything what your chronic back pain is doing, your amygdala is constantly checking back in with your chronic back pain. Same thing goes for tinnitus. So when the amygdala and the fear and panic based center have established this reaction to tinnitus, because tinnitus is something dangerous and it keeps us stuck in the same vicious cycle, then very likely the problem with our tinnitus is very, very big, right? So therefore, when our problem with our tinnitus is very, very big, we have to avoid it at all costs, right? So that's when we get sold hearing aid maskers, $3,000 hearing aid maskers, because people say, and this was something that in the last YouTube video I shared here with Malcolm, his first audiology appointment, and the person goes, you have to avoid your tinnitus at all costs. And I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've heard in a long time. Because avoiding your tinnitus at all costs basically means that you set yourself up for more reactive behavior of constantly avoiding to hear this. And when you do hear it, you have a massive anxiety reaction or even a panic attack. The opposite is the way to go. The way to go of learning that tinnitus is a benign body sensation that so many people in our population experience based on the age or noise or genetic factors, but it's a benign body sensation. And avoiding it more and more is only going to drive the amygdala more into, whenever we perceive it, oh my God, what is happening here? Why do we have this? I can't live my life like this, etc. Right? So the problem is not with the tinnitus itself, but the way we try to avoid it. And that's also like things that you try to avoid, but that are actually reality. That's what causes depression. That's what keeps us depressed. Reality is you have tinnitus, but also the reality is how you relate to your tinnitus makes all the difference in the world. Look at me. Like, I am deaf in this ear. I've had the hearing aid and the tinnitus for so many years. Tinnitus doesn't bother me one bit. I sleep with an earplug at night in my good ear because I avoid having other sounds distract me and wake me up. So the tinnitus for me is like silence. It's in the same way that someone who loses a leg in an accident, they start walking with a prosthetic leg, which at first feels very weird, but eventually the brain will not question whether it's a normal or prosthetic leg, nearly at least, right? When the person is walking in the street, they won't be focused on their leg anymore after a few months or years. That's something that our brains are incredibly plastic, incredibly able to adapt to change. And that's 100% true for tinnitus as well. So, the thing I want to leave you guys with today, because it's late here in Berlin, and it's our weekly live stream here on YouTube now. I'm going to be doing a weekly live stream here now to share a little bit of all the things that I've been learning in the last couple of years. But the thing that I want to leave you guys with tonight, and I think this is one of the most important things that I can share with people with tinnitus, is that if we can understand why we relate to tinnitus in the way we do, meaning the thoughts, emotions, and reactions that we have towards our tinnitus, meaning I can't sit in silence and read a book anymore. And we start saying, well, that's a belief system. That's not the tinnitus. It's not the tinnitus telling you that you can't read a book in silence anymore. It's something that you think about your tinnitus is true, which is keeping you stuck. You don't do it anymore because you've tried it once, maybe for 10 seconds. But what I say, can we go small steps in telling you that and starting to tell your brain that tinnitus is in fact not this big gloomy cloud looming over your life, meaning that there's nothing you could do about this anymore? No, absolutely not. Can we start creating an understanding for tinnitus also in our society? In my opinion, I mean, I'm just getting started with all of this relatively early on in the journey. But what I have found with working with all these hundreds of people is that the biggest obstacle is the way that we relate to the thoughts and emotions that we have in response to our tinnitus. And that keeps us stuck in this vicious fight or flight loop with this anxiety, meaning to us, we need to avoid it at all costs, which leads to further arousal, which leads to further adrenaline, etc., which leads to the fact that at night we can't sleep. So the thing that we need to do is not to avoid tinnitus this one bit more. We need to teach our brain to go from one habitual reaction, which is one of avoidance and conditioning, I can't live with this and I can't be like this the way it is, to a reaction where, aha, there it is. It's okay for it to be there in that very moment. And then I can go through that moment in the same vein that when I get annoyed about something, someone in traffic, I very quickly react very, very severely. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I overreacted here. Right. So, and when we bring a more dynamic nature to the process, and I mean, that's what we've created in the coaching program or in the online program in mytinnitus.club, is we want to help you change the way you relate to your tinnitus and the way you continuously react to your tinnitus. So if when we can change this habitual reaction to your tinnitus, your brain can start learning to disassociate the negativity and the danger with tinnitus. In the same way that when you got bitten by that dog, you slowly but steadily go maybe to your friend's dog first, pat him a little bit behind the ears, and then slowly but steadily make the association again that not all dogs are dangerous. Not all dogs will bite you, right? And the same thing is true for tinnitus. And the more we can learn that to ourselves, we unlearn this habitual reaction in which we think tinnitus is the thing that's destroying our life, and our life in our life we can't do the things that we want anymore. So I want to leave you with this. You know that here in the year 2024, I'm doing this new format on YouTube, not only the live sessions, but also, and maybe you've seen this on my channel, the one-on-one coaching sessions that I do for free. 30 minutes coaching sessions that I do for free with the people who want and need them, in exchange for being able to record and share them with the world, in the hope that I can spread a little bit of everything that I've been doing in the past few years. Chris, I'm going to get to your question in 1 second, but I just wanted to share this. The thing that I found most helpful, and where I say this is what we want to do, is we want to help you do all of this, and we want to help you for free. So if you are interested, then go to one of the last videos that we have here on the channel. You will find a link to get a free 30-minute coaching session if you agree, and it's fine for you that we share it on YouTube afterwards, because then all of you guys out there here in the community can benefit from it. The world can benefit from it, and I can share a little bit of the knowledge of having worked with so many people with tinnitus and trying to help and support them. Other than that, you guys, of course, can go to tinnitus-guide.com. There's my free guide to tinnitus, but I'm going to answer Chris's question. So Chris writes, hi, what about if you have hyperacusis and tinnitus? Can you help with both? Yeah, I haven't covered this in the live. Hyperacusis is both psychological and physiological as well, even more so than tinnitus. So hyperacusis is, for those who are maybe on here and who are not quite familiar with that, hyperacusis, the term means the super sensitivities to sound. And let me just explain it to you in one quick moment. I've explained the example with a dog before. When you are bitten by a dog, your amygdala reacts to the dog, so the fear and panic-based center, and says, okay, dogs are dangerous, don't go close to dogs. When you develop tinnitus and sound sensitivity in your ears, your amygdala develops this relationship with tinnitus and the sound, right? So loud sounds literally become threatening and dangerous because you got tinnitus. Also because of the reason what I talked about earlier on. You are now sensitive to sounds, and you are afraid that sounds are going to make everything that you've experienced in relationship to your tinnitus worse, meaning all the sleepless nights, all the anxiety, all the terrible things that you read on the internet. All of this is going to be made worse by loud sounds. That's how hyperacusis then develops. And both of them, and hyperacusis even more, is a psychological and physiological phenomena, right? So it's very, very important that we understand that there's a physiological factor, whereas our ears literally start hurting with the exposure of loud sounds. But at the same time, it's a psychological factor by which the brain has tagged loud sounds, and not even too loud sounds, right? But just even everyday sounds like clanking of plates when you take them out of the dishwasher, or maybe a truck running next to you on a street or something like that. And the most important thing for hyperacusis and also for tinnitus is building alternative habits. And by alternative habits, I mean is stopping to always walk around everywhere with the earplug. I know it's very difficult. So you might start very small, Chris. If you do have severe hyperacusis then you might want to start very small. But even small things like knowing that you're fine and that your ears won't be hurt and that your tinnitus, that your hearing won't suffer from normal exposure to sounds, is one of the first steps to sort of like break open this psychological difficulty of the hypersensitivity or the oversensitivity of sounds, and the psychological fear that your tinnitus might get worse, right? So be gentle with yourself. Don't do too much at the start, but maybe you go to one place where you say, okay, I can handle it without having an earplug in or something like that, right? And then you extend it a little bit. You do it a few more moments, and then you build the confidence that going through these situations, nothing actually happened. In the same way that someone with agoraphobia, for example, fear of supermarkets or crowded trains or something like that, they think they can't go to these places without a water bottle, just hypothetically, right? And then their amygdala says, well, if I don't go there with a water bottle, I might die, or I might have a heart attack or something. So this is similar to hyperacusis. And what we do is we basically go with a friend without the water bottle. So we try to bridge the gap that our brain can learn to disassociate these things from danger, right? So in the case of hyperacusis, it's slight but gentle exposure to normal everyday sounds, and building the confidence that they can't hurt you, your ear, or even your tinnitus. I know it's not easy because I've done it myself. Even when I got the last hearing aid fitting, the last hearing aid was very, very loud to myself, and it was difficult to bear with that. But eventually I got used to the new fitting, and my ears were fine because the audiologist told me like everything's fine. You should get used to this level of hearing, because it's important that you can get the best hearing that we have available for you. All right. I hope, Chris, this was helpful for you. Again, I do believe that the solution is very similar to both, to the connection of hyperacusis and tinnitus. And I can also say that I've experienced both myself as well, especially after tinnitus increases, when your ears are very sensitive. And the most important thing is not to get dragged down and stay in this continuous observation mode where you always think about any sound might make this so much worse. And you got to break that open a little bit. You bring some compassion and some slow training into like being okay with those situations but not overdoing it, right? So I think that would be it. All right. Any other questions? If not, then I already gave you everything that you can do, including the free coaching session on the YouTube channel in the last video with Malcolm. Malcolm from San Antonio. We had a coaching session this morning. But yeah, if you want to get one of those as well, then there's the link in the video with Malcolm. We have some cool stuff coming up in the community as well. We have a new addition to our system called the buddy system, where we pair people inside the program, and they get to do the progress together of the habituation course. So I can suggest that you guys, if you are interested, check those out as well, because everything I've talked about today is, of course, sort of like a big overview of everything that I've been working on and that has been helpful for all the people that I've been working with in the last couple of years. But of course, it's a little bit more difficult to comprise that into a strategic a plan that you can follow here on YouTube, and therefore we have created this online program where you have the oversight from not only my side but also from my wife and people who have been on this journey for a couple of years already. All right, guys. If you have any other question, put them in the chat. If not, then I'm going to sit down on the couch and watch some Netflix, and I will see you back here in next week's live stream. If you guys are keen. Other than that, you guys know where to get your resources, either from the other videos or at outtraintinnitus.com. I'll be happy to help and support, or at www.mytinnitus.club. All right, guys, I wish you a fantastic evening and hope everyone's well. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.